People talk about serious research. And let's be clear, some people are called serious researchers that are the king of selling fake stories. I did miss one point of the explosion here in ufology. Richard Dolan and Jeremy Corbell, they have been caught using fake information. Richard Dolan has been caught using fake information or lying to his audience or using 100% fake stories, fake sources to sell stories about UFOs and aliens. I took a lot of heat for saying that Jeremy Corbell and Richard Dolan's CIA deathbed confession video used 100% fake source. Took a lot of heat for that. A lot of slings and arrows. How dare you question the serious researcher, Richard Dolan? And Richard Dolan, when he was caught with his pants down using a fake source, Richard Dolan said that he was going to get up on top of that. Richard Dolan said that he was going to investigate and he would make his own statement. But he never did, because it's easier for Richard Dolan to just sweep that lie under the rug, sweep that 100% fake source under the rug and not issue a statement about it, so that he can keep right along going, selling his fake alien stories with fake sources, or let's see, his latest, the Wilson documents, the UFO leak of the century. But in order to believe that UFO leak of the century, first of all, you have to believe what he's saying about Stephen Greer, right? Who's been caught lying, I don't know how many times. You have to believe Richard Dolan's 12 or so anonymous sources propping up that story that nobody else is allowed to interview. You have to believe his Mr. X, his anonymous source who comes on his show to try to convince everyone that Richard Dolan is right about those fake Wilson documents, which, by the way, the man, Wilson, in it, said these stories are completely and totally fake. These stories are fake. And I just want to remind everybody that, Richard Dolan's on a lot of shows. He was recently on a show where I said all the substantial and supportive evidence that he used 100% fake source. I sent it to another show host where Richard Dolan was going to be appearing. And I appealed to that show host and I said, please, you and I may disagree on many things, but you know that him using a completely and totally fake made-up source is wrong. And please have the courage, have the ethics to ask him one question for me. Because he won't come on my show to answer questions because he's a coward and he knows that I have the proof that he used 100% fake made-up source to sell this CIA deathbed confession video with Jeremy Corbell. He knows I'm right. He was in on it from the start. So I asked another show host, please, you and I may disagree, but please do me a solid. Do me a favor. I'll do anything in return for you as a favor. I just want you to ask him one question for me, please. That UFO show host made excuses. And he refused to ask Richard Dolan a single question that matters. Instead, he did a UFO crash retrieval panel with Richard Dolan and did the UFO circle jerk and just let Richard Dolan talk for 2 hours and speculate about UFO crash retrievals when Richard Dolan has zero actual physical proof or evidence of UFO crash retrievals. Yeah, that show host did the UFO circle jerk with Richard Dolan. Made excuses for why he couldn't be bothered to ask Richard Dolan why he lied to the entire UFO community, why he sold 100% fake story. Couldn't be bothered. He was too busy doing the UFO circle jerk that everyone does with these UFO celebrities. And I'm tired of these UFO circle jerk host cowards. Somebody needs to ask these people the serious questions. And while I may not get answers because they're too cowardly to come on my show and ask and answer real and valid questions about their dirty dealings, about their telling and selling fake stories, but I'll keep asking those questions, and I'll keep taking the slings and arrows. But it would be stupid for me not to remind people that it's probably wrong to try to murder the guy that's asking the questions that you don't like. And here's a video that we did called "Did Richard Dolan and Jeremy Corbell Use a Fake Source to Sell a Fake Story?" We're going to share this. And this is taken from, this is what happens when Richard Dolan, when a show host has the courage to ask a single question from me. Look what happens. Look what happens when Richard Dolan is forced to answer a single question from me. Look what happens. This, my friends, more than anything, may explain why Richard Dolan is too much of a coward, a little weasel. He's too much of a weasel and a coward to come on my show and answer these hard questions.
Particular interview we're about to do. This is a man who's in the U.S. military, who's had experiences, he says, relating to knowledge of ET presence here on Earth. We know he is who he says he was. This is a man who's in the U.S. military. We know he is who he says he was. This is a man who's in the U.S. military. We know he is who he says he was. Is who he says he was. We know he is who he says he was.
This next question comes from Stephen Cambion. He wants to know, how do you feel about your participation in the CIA deathbed confession interview? I'm unsure what that is, but many people keep referencing that in the comment section. Now that other researchers have proven, quote unquote, that man was not who he said he was and never worked for the military or CIA.
Oh, wow. I guess I should get up on top of that one. I'll just say this, look. I met him, I met his son-in-law. I got to know his son-in-law pretty well. This man had been a witness back in the 90s for Linda Moulton Howe. Yeah, maybe he was just pulling a yarn. I mean, the way it happened, look, I can't know before I go in to interview someone every single way it's going to turn out. You can't make me like apologize for if I make a mistake. I've made mistakes. What am I supposed to do? Go cower into a cave? Like, it just happened. So this man, if that's true, I promise this, because I actually didn't know, I wasn't on top of this. I'll look into it, and if that's the case, I'll make my own statement. But the thing is, I never really knew what to make of it. I was asked in 2013, very beginning of 2013, to interview this man. I was told he was an important witness. I'm like, oh, okay. It was actually Linda's case, and I didn't want to take it, but the impression that I got, which turned out to be not true, was that Linda wasn't going to do it. It turns out Linda just didn't know that it was being done. I think she would have easily done it. So I went up there. He was in northern Minnesota, and I went with a few other people. I'll leave the names off. The late Ron Garner, who's no longer with us, he was the one who really pushed this case. And I was like, all right, well, I'll interview him. I did my best to get on top of it. I met with him. He was a very sweet man. I thought he was going to die in front of me, like during much of this interview. His health was terrible. But I will tell you this. I spoke to his son-in-law, who was a theology student at the time. These are good people. And the son said, yep, I've heard this man's story for years. He's never wavered. So all I did was I interviewed him. And I did my best, you know. Sometimes the best isn't good enough. I didn't go through a detailed background check, but no, I didn't. So if it's been proven to be a mistake, then well, these are the breaks. This is a man who's in the U.S. military. We know he is who he says he was. We know he is who he says he was. I didn't go through a detailed background check, but no, I didn't. We know he is who he says he was. I didn't go through a detailed background check, but no, I didn't. We know he is who he says he was. Look, I can't know before before I go in to interview someone every single way it's going to turn out. I can't be, you can't make me like apologize for if I make a mistake. I've made mistakes. What am I supposed to do? Go cower into a cave? Like, it just happened. I didn't go through a detailed background check, but no, I didn't. You can't make me like apologize for if I make a mistake. I promise this because I actually didn't know. I wasn't on top of this. So I'll look into it. And if that's the case, I'll make my own statement.
And it appears that we're still waiting for a statement from Richard Dolan about why or how he knowingly and willingly, I believe, used a completely and totally fake, made-up source. Now, I took a lot of flack, took a lot of slings and arrows for doing this, for revealing the truth about Richard Dolan using a 100% fake, made-up source. How do I know? People ask. Why am I so confident that Richard Dolan interviewed a fake source? Well, friends, it's very simple. And I'm going to reveal to you just one data point I have that proves conclusively that Richard Dolan interviewed a fake source. Not only did Richard Dolan profit from that story based completely and totally on a fake source, but that man he mentioned, Ronald Gardner, sold a book. And Ronald Gardner claimed that he worked closely with that source, anonymous. And that this close relationship that Ronald Gardner had with him, it says right here in the book, took place between 2010 and 2015. I'm sorry if you can't see that, you'll have to trust me. Compiled and edited at the principal's request by C. Ronald Gardner, who worked closely with, what does that say? With the subject from 2010 to 2015. So Ronald Gardner claims that he worked closely with that source from 2010 to 2015. Richard Dolan claimed, and Jeremy Corbell claimed to interview that man in 2014. Right? So we've got Jeremy Corbell and Richard Dolan claiming they're interviewing this CIA deathbed confession on his deathbed in 2014. We've got Ronald Gardner claiming that he worked closely with the subject from 2010 to 2015. But there's a huge problem with this timeline, and here it is. Here's the gotcha moment. People love gotcha moments. I want to ask Jeremy Corbell and Richard Dolan publicly, how on God's green earth did you interview a man in 2014, a source that came from Linda Moulton Howe? How did you interview that source in 2014? When, according to Linda Moulton Howe and her own blog and various other sources I found, that man died in 2008. That's right. Jeremy Corbell and Richard Dolan somehow managed to interview a dead man in 2014 that Linda Moulton Howe said died in 2008. Linda Moulton Howe reported on her blog in a 2008 blog post, I have recently been informed that Cooper, the man known as Anonymous, recently died. That was a 2008 blog post. How on God's, it's not good to speak ill of the dead. Ronald Gardner is dead. But how did Ronald Gardner work closely with the source in 2010 to 2015 when the guy died? The man died, according to Linda Moulton Howe and other sources I found. This man died in 2008. But somehow, Ronald Gardner worked closely with a dead man from 2010 to 2015. And somehow, Jeremy Corbell and Richard Dolan interviewed a dead man in 2014. This opens an incredible amount of questions. How did Jeremy Corbell had Richard Dolan interview a guy in 2014 who already had died in 2008? Was that an actor? Was that a fake source that was claiming he was the guy who died in 2008? Are Richard Dolan and Jeremy Corbell such terrible, piss-poor researchers that they didn't bother to check that the guy was already dead? No, friends. I've got a whistleblower. A whistleblower who worked closely with Linda Moulton Howe, who told me that what happened was Jeremy Corbell apparently decided to steal the story from Linda Moulton Howe and run with it. Maybe, just maybe, if they had actually asked Linda Moulton Howe, either of these two clowns, either Richard Dolan or Jeremy Corbell, would have actually bothered to ask, Linda Moulton Howe would have told them that that man died in 2008, just as she had reported his death on her public blog. But now that blog is behind a paywall, but don't worry, I've got copies of it, and we'll release it for any interested researcher who wants to sling some more arrows at me, who wants to tell me I'm wrong. Richard Dolan would never use a fake source. He's a credible researcher. Credible researchers don't interview dead men to sell stories about aliens. Clowns do. Richard Dolan is a clown. And I stand by my reporting that Richard Dolan and Jeremy Corbell interviewed a fake source to sell a story about aliens. And this, my friends, is not the only story like this out there. The UFO community is filled with them. This is the elephant in the room that no one will talk about. These people are truth seekers and researchers? No, I don't think so. And I've got to tell you, that's one data point. One. I've just shared with you one data point of many that I have that prove that Jeremy Corbell and Richard Dolan knowingly, willingly, deliberately, and with great effort perpetrated an incredible hoax on the entire UFO community and by extension, the world, by selling a fake story with a dead man being interviewed who died years previously to the interview as the main source of the story. This is the disgusting and slimy nature of this thing that we're all just supposed to ignore. We're all just supposed to not talk about that elephant in the room. But I've got to tell you, there is some good news. Because along with all of these UFO celebrity clowns that are out there trying to get rich selling fake stories about aliens, there are true truth seekers out there who are not willing to use fake sources or accept people using fake sources, people who are actually revealing people using fake or problematic sources. I'm sorry, but if your source for your story is a child molester, you're not somebody I want to listen to or believe, and no one should. If the source for your story is a sexual predator, I'm not willing to listen to you. If the source for your story is a murderer or a rapist, then your information is not credible, and I'm not willing to listen to you, and neither should anyone else be willing to listen to your fake stories propped up by child molesters, murderers, rapists, sexual predators, or dead men. Now, I mentioned I have multiple data points proving that story was a complete and total fake fraud hoax. So where do we find ourselves? Now we've got Richard Dolan involved, admittedly, in the Roswell slides hoax. We've got Richard Dolan pumping up these fake Wilson documents with some 12 anonymous sources. The Wilson documents are propped up, I'm going to say it again, with something like let's just be fair and say 8 anonymous sources prop up the Wilson document story that he's been peddling for years now and has made more money that Richard Dolan has made more money selling these fake Wilson documents, the story of them, than anyone on earth. And in order to prop up that story and continue to sell it, Richard Dolan has to use at least 8 anonymous sources. Now, some may say that the use of anonymous sources in journalism is an age-old thing, and sometimes we just have to trust that people need to be anonymous, and sometimes researchers and journalists just have to use anonymous sources. But I would ask you, should we believe Richard Dolan about the Wilson documents when he's using some 8 or more anonymous sources to sell that story? Because look what happened under scrutiny to Richard Dolan when he was using 1 anonymous source. The CIA deathbed confession used 1 anonymous source, and we can prove definitively that that source was 100% fake. But somehow, Richard Dolan getting busted selling a complete and total hoax and fake story with 1 anonymous source, right? But we're still supposed to believe him about these Wilson documents where he's using some 8 anonymous sources. If we can demonstrate that he performed a hoax using 1 anonymous source, he interviewed a dead man to sell that story. His anonymous source in that story was dead for years before he interviewed him. But I'm supposed to blindly trust the great research skills and efforts of Richard Dolan when he's selling another story that uses some 8 or more anonymous sources? Anonymous sources no one can interview, no one can verify, no one can talk to. Well, friends, at least in the case of this CIA deathbed confession, I got him. I got him by the short and curlies. He interviewed a dead man. That's a hoax. And I believe that the Wilson documents are an even bigger hoax. Will Richard Dolan give every penny of the money he was paid to participate in the CIA deathbed confession video? Will he give that money back? Or at least do something ethically good to make up for it? Like, I don't know, apologize for interviewing a dead man to sell a story about aliens? Richard Dolan, you just got busted interviewing a dead man to sell a story about aliens. You interviewed a dead man. Are you giving the money back? We saw this clip. Well, what am I can't apologize every time I make a mistake. I think you should apologize when you get caught interviewing a dead man to sell a story about aliens, Richard Dolan. So people can slag me all they want. I'm not lying to you. I'm not interviewing dead people, claiming that they're somebody they're not, to sell stories about aliens.